There's a walking pattern that I see constantly in my clinic. And here's the surprising part. It happens in people who walk every single day. They're moving, they're getting their steps in, and yet their hips are quietly getting weaker with each walk they take. It's not because they're walking too little. It's because of how they're finishing each step. More specifically, they're not finishing each step. Your hips are supposed to extend slightly behind your body and push off the ground with each stride. But when that doesn't happen, and for millions of people after 65, it gradually stops happening. The very muscles that keep you stable, upright, and powerful start to shut down. The gluteal muscles, those large muscles in the back of your hip, begin clocking out because they're not being asked to work. And here's what makes this so sneaky. You don't feel it happening. You just notice one day that getting up from a chair feels harder, or that walking across a parking lot leaves your legs more tired than it used to, or that you're gripping onto things a little more often. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what this pattern looks like, why it develops so quietly, and how to recognize it in yourself with a simple self-check you can do in your hallway. Then I'm going to teach you one cue, one small mental shift that can start reactivating those hip muscles the moment you use it. This isn't about walking farther. It's about walking in a way that actually uses the muscles you're trying to keep. It's about finishing the step. Before we go any further, I'd love to know who's watching today. Drop your age in the comments and let me know where you're tuning in from. I always find it remarkable how many different places these videos reach, and it genuinely helps me understand who this information is serving. If you're a caregiver watching this for a parent or someone you love, just write the word caregiver down below. You're doing something generous by learning this. Now, let me explain what's happening biomechanically when this shuffle glide pattern takes over, because once you understand the why, everything else starts to make sense. When you take a proper, healthy step, your leg doesn't just swing forward and land, it also pushes backward at the end of each stride. There's a moment when your foot is behind you, pressing into the ground, and your hip is extended. That extension is the trigger that activates your gluteal muscles. It's the signal that tells them to fire, to stabilize, to power the next step. But when steps become short and quick, when the feet barely clear the ground, when there's more of a gliding or shuffling quality to the walk, that backward extension never happens. The hip stays in a neutral or slightly flexed position the entire time. The foot lands almost directly underneath the body and picks up again before it ever gets behind you. And because the glutes respond to hip extension, that's their primary job, they start receiving fewer and fewer signals to work. Over weeks and months, they weaken. Not from disease, not from injury, but simply from disuse built into the walking pattern itself. This pattern doesn't develop overnight, and it's certainly not anyone's fault. It usually starts for very understandable reasons. Maybe you're walking on a slippery tile floor at home and your body instinctively shortens your steps for safety. Maybe you're carrying a heavy bag and your entire posture stiffens up to manage the load. Maybe you've had a minor ache in one hip or knee and your nervous system quietly adjusted your gait to avoid discomfort. Maybe you spend a lot of time walking in slippers or soft house shoes that encourage a more shuffling stride because lifting the feet doesn't feel necessary. Maybe you've simply gotten used to looking down while you walk, watching for obstacles, checking your footing, and that forward head posture has collapsed your chest and restricted how far your hip can extend. Whatever the initial cause, the pattern sticks. The brain is remarkably efficient at making movement automatic, and once it learns a new way of walking, it keeps that pattern running in the background without any conscious thought. That's wonderful when the pattern is helpful. But it becomes a problem when the pattern quietly shuts down the very muscles you need most for stability and strength. You're walking every day and thinking you're maintaining your legs, but the workload has been shifted. Instead of your glutes doing their share, the thighs start overworking. The hip flexors in the front start getting tight. The lower back muscles start gripping to stabilize what the hips should be stabilizing. And the small muscles on the outside of the hip muscles that were meant to assist, not lead, get overloaded trying to compensate. That's why so many people with this pattern complain of fatigue in the legs, tightness in the lower back, or a sense that walking just feels harder than it used to, even though nothing specific hurts. The system is working inefficiently. The big, powerful muscles are quiet, and the smaller supporting muscles are burning out. Let me walk you through a simple self-check you can do right now, or the next time you're in a hallway or a long room at home. This isn't a medical test, and it doesn't diagnose anything. It's just a way to become aware of your own walking pattern, which is the first step toward changing it. Start with what I call the sound and swing check. Walk at your normal pace for about 10 to 15 steps and just listen. Are your feet making a scuffing or dragging sound against the floor? Or are they lifting cleanly with each step? If you hear shuffling, that's often a sign that the foot isn't clearing the ground well, which tends to pair with shortened steps and missing push-off. Now, notice your arms. Are they swinging gently and naturally at your sides, or are they stiff, barely moving, maybe even slightly held in front of you? Frozen arms almost always pair with a locked-up walking pattern. The body moves as a connected system, and when the hips stop extending, the opposite arm stops swinging. It's like watching someone walk with the parking brake partially on everything, becomes a little rigid, a little controlled, a little hesitant. Next, try the back step check. This one requires you to slow down and pay close attention. Take 3 or 4 very slow steps, almost exaggerated, and as you step, notice where your back foot ends up at the end of each stride. Does it actually travel behind your body, even slightly, before it lifts off? Or does it pick up when it's still directly underneath you? If the foot never gets behind the hip, you're not getting any meaningful hip extension, which means the glutes aren't being activated. Most people with this pattern are shocked when they pay attention, because it feels like they're taking normal steps. But visually, the back leg never reaches behind them at all. It just lifts and swings forward from a neutral position. That missing extension is exactly where the weakness is building. Now, I want to give you the fix. And I'm going to keep this simple, because complexity is the enemy of consistency. You don't need a complicated new exercise routine. You need one cue that changes how you walk during the walks you're already taking. Here's the cue I teach most often, and I want you to try it the next time you're taking a short walk at home or heading to the mailbox. Push the floor behind you. That's it. As you walk, think about your foot pressing the ground backward at the end of each step, like you're gently pushing the floor away behind you before the foot lifts. This small mental shift tends to produce several changes at once. It naturally lengthens the step slightly. It encourages the leg to extend behind the body. It activates the gluteal muscles because you're now asking them to do their job. And it often straightens the posture almost automatically, because you can't push backward effectively if you're hunched forward. The feeling should be subtle but noticeable. You might feel a gentle squeeze in the back of the hip as the glute fires. You might notice that your stride feels more rhythmic, more grounded. Some people describe it as finally walking with intention instead of just letting the legs move on autopilot. When you first try this cue, do it slowly and in a safe environment. Use a hallway where you can touch the wall if needed. Make sure the floor is clear and you're wearing stable shoes. Don't try this on uneven surfaces or while carrying anything until the pattern feels natural. And if you feel any sharp pain in the hip or back, stop immediately. Pain is always a signal to pause and consult with a professional. To help this cue become automatic, I want to give you a few short practice drills that you can sprinkle into your day without needing a formal exercise session. These aren't workouts, they're micro practices designed to retrain the pattern. The heel-to-toe roll is the first one. Stand in a safe spot with something to hold nearby and take a few slow steps while focusing on the rolling motion of each foot. Heel touches first, then the foot rolls through the middle, and finally you press off through the toes and ball of the foot. This rolling action is what creates the push-off, and many people have lost it entirely. Practicing it slowly, just for 8 or 10 steps, starts to rebuild the motor pattern. The pause and finish drill is another useful one. Take a step, pause for just a second at the end of that step, and consciously feel whether your back foot is behind you and whether your glute is engaged. Then take the next step and pause again. This slowed-down approach interrupts the automatic shuffle pattern and forces your brain to feel the correct position. After a few repetitions, you can resume walking normally, but you'll often find that some of that awareness carries over into your regular stride. The wall-guided posture walk is helpful for people who've developed a forward lean. Walk parallel to a wall, close enough that you could touch it with your shoulder, and use that wall as a reference to keep your chest lifted and your head over your body instead of in front of it. When the posture is upright, the hip can extend more fully. Many people are surprised how much their walking pattern improves just from standing taller. And finally, the carry-free reset is important to practice before you add any challenges. Do all of this work first without holding anything, no bags, no phones, no cups of coffee. Let your arms swing freely and your body move without restrictions. Once the pattern feels more natural, you can gradually reintroduce carrying things, but even then, pay attention. Carrying often triggers the old pattern because the body stiffens up to stabilize the load. Let me share some common mistakes I see that tend to reinforce this hip weakening pattern, because awareness is half the battle. Looking down constantly is one of the biggest ones. When your eyes are fixed on the ground a few feet ahead, your head drops forward, your chest collapses, and your hip extension becomes mechanically restricted. You literally cannot push off fully when you're folded forward at the waist. The fix is to scan the ground briefly with your eyes, then bring your gaze up to the horizon, or at least 10 to 15 feet ahead. Trust your peripheral vision to catch obstacles. Another mistake is taking tiny steps as a safety strategy. I understand why people do this. It feels more controlled, less risky, but those tiny steps create constant drag, keep the hips in a perpetually neutral position, and actually reduce stability because you never establish a solid base. Slightly longer steps with a proper push-off are actually safer because they engage the stabilizing muscles more fully. A stiff upper body is another pattern I see regularly. If the arms aren't swinging, the hips usually aren't extending. The body works as a coordinated system, and locking down the upper body tends to lock down the lower body too. Let your arms hang naturally and swing gently. They should move opposite to the legs without any effort. Walking with a very narrow base, where the feet almost pass in a single line, like you're on a tightrope, creates side-to-side wobble and makes it harder for the hips to work properly. Keep your feet about hip-width apart so each step is solid and grounded. Turning the feet outward excessively, what some people call duck-footed walking, changes the mechanics of push-off entirely. When the foot angles out, the pressure goes to the wrong part of the foot and the glute doesn't fire correctly. The feet should point mostly forward, with maybe a very slight natural turnout, but not splayed wide. And finally, rushing the first few steps after standing up is a mistake I see constantly. People rise from a chair and immediately start walking before they've found their balance or their rhythm. Those first few rushed steps are often pure shuffle, and that shuffle sets the tone for the whole walk. Take a moment after standing. Let your balance settle. Then start walking with intention. I'm curious, where do you notice this pattern most in your own walking? Is it in those first few steps after you stand up from sitting? Is it when you're walking on soft carpet, where the scuffing sound gets muffled and you can't hear it? Or is it on hard floors, where you can actually hear the shuffle but haven't known what it meant until now? Leave a comment and let me know, because I think the answers will help other viewers recognize patterns in themselves. And if this video is clicking for you, if you're starting to see something in your own walking that you want to change, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It's a simple way to help this information reach more seniors who might be weakening their hips without realizing it, and every bit of visibility helps. I want to add an important note before I let you go, because safety always comes first. The walking pattern I've described today is common and correctable, but sudden changes in gait can sometimes indicate something more serious. If you notice that your walking has changed significantly in the past few days, if one leg suddenly feels weaker than the other, if you're tripping or catching your toe much more than usual, or if you're experiencing new pain in the hip that wasn't there before, please get evaluated by a healthcare professional. Those kinds of sudden changes deserve proper assessment, not just self-correction at home. And if you ever experience chest pain while walking, fainting or near fainting, severe shortness of breath, sudden new weakness or numbness on one side of your body, new confusion, or a sudden severe headache, stop what you're doing and seek urgent medical care. Those are red flags that require immediate attention. For the vast majority of people, though, the shuffle glide pattern is a gradual habit that can be gradually retrained. And the techniques I've given you today are a safe and effective starting point when practiced with awareness and care. Here's what I want you to do next. Today, or the next time you have a clear, flat hallway and a few minutes of quiet, do the self-check. Listen for scuffing, notice your arm swing, and pay attention to whether your back foot ever travels behind your body. Just observe, without judgment. Then, on your next short walk, maybe just to the kitchen and back, try the cue. Push the floor behind you. Feel for that gentle engagement in the back of the hip. See if your stride changes, if your posture lifts, if the walk feels different. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be conscious. And then come back to the comments and tell me what you noticed. Did the cue make sense? Did you feel the difference? Did anything surprise you? I read these comments, and your experience helps me shape future videos to address what actually matters to you. Your hips were designed to propel you forward with power and stability for your entire life. They didn't stop doing that job because of age alone. They stopped because the walking pattern changed, and no one told them they were still needed. Now you know. Now you can ask them to work again, step by step, with one simple cue and a little bit of practice. That's the beautiful thing about the body at any age. It responds to what you ask of it. Start asking your hips to finish the step, and they will answer. Walk well, walk aware, and know that every step you take with intention is a step towards staying strong and independent for years to come.